Okay. No, it's going to refuse to pick up my head. Okay, so screw that. Hello, everybody. I'll fix that later. This is just going to be a quick session on just a little bit of Gmail management, just because I know it catches out a lot of people. And to be honest, it's kind of one of these things. I'm not an organised person in the slightest. I've got a brain that goes in 100,000 different places all at the same time, and I can't keep a train of thought going more than like 5 minutes. It's just like a random hodgepodge of things going on up here. So I do need things to actually keep things making sense in my life. Otherwise, it all goes completely out the window. And one of the things that, it took a while to get the swing of, but got there in the end, is the Gmail inbox. So just a little bit about an inbox. It's pretty much like the physical equivalent would just be a to-do list where you kind of got things like Post-it notes, and you just stick them on the wall, and it just comes. It's like random people come up to this wall, they give you things to do, and they just stick it on the wall. Do this, except that then other random things come along, and it's just like, okay, random flyers just going to be popped on there, and okay, so now maybe this isn't particularly good as a to-do list. This shouldn't actually be kind of where I keep things because it's been polluted by random junk. And then before you know it, you've got flyers from the local pizza place, the Viagra emails, just random shouts to kind of, can you help me with this, that, and the other, and suddenly it's all gone completely out the window. So it doesn't really work as a place just kind of keep all the things you want to do because it's just too damn messy. You'll quickly find it gets filled up with all sorts of crap. So there's a few things you can do to kind of just clear it down and simplify it. So this is a simple... I've got some text up there that I should have had off in the notes. So have you heard of something called getting things done? It's something that's been around for years and years and years. It's just the simple idea that when something comes towards you, you find some way to kind of just file it off very, very quickly. And when you have something coming into your inbox, you just go, okay, well, that's going to go here, there, there, there. Is it a project? Is it something I can delegate? And you very quickly decide what you're going to do with everything. It's been around forever. And if you kind of... I'm going to actually share out some stuff here. Actually, if you just pass these around. You're not going to have to worry too much about taking notes because I'm going to have everything in the slideshow and you'll be able to get to it through these little links here. And you'll be able to read up a lot more about just getting things done and a few other similar kind of project management kind of things. But how that ties in with Gmail. Now, when you kind of first open up Gmail, you've just got this. In fact, actually, when you first go to Gmail, let's start there. Has anyone just recently migrated from Thunderbird, or is anyone still using it? Or is everybody a Gmail person? Okay, so we've got a few. I'm going to share something with you later on that's going to make things a lot easier when it comes to the whole jumping ship from one to the other. I've been going through something with Jenny Dunn recently that's kind of just been fantastic because it's pointed out so many things that I've completely forgotten from when I converted in 2011. But you kind of, when you first go into it, into Gmail, you have all these settings that you don't really kind of know about until you click this little cog up here in the top corner. And in there's loads of bump, and just in the general thing, just a few other things that make life a lot easier, certainly when it just comes to quickly organising things in there. One of the quickest and easiest ways of marking things out is just the stars system. So you've got all these stars that you can actually just kind of figure out which ones you actually want to use, and you just drag them in and around. And they're really quick and easy for just kind of figuring out exactly how you're going to tag something. So if you want to get something done maybe someday, that will just be a question mark on that. Reference will just be that little I symbol. And these kind of, you can easily just add these to anything just using the keyboard. So if you've got keyboard shortcuts turned on, and really do, because it's fantastic, it makes things so much quicker, you can just sit there tapping S on an email and it will just add the right label you want, just until you get to the right little one. So you can very quickly label up anything that comes in just like a few taps. Just go through and onto the next email, go through, onto the next, onto the next, onto the next. And that means very quickly you'll be able to see exactly what something has to have done with it and then go from there when you've got time to organise it a little bit better. One of the other things that's kind of, just because it's in the same kind of area is desktop notifications. Some people have it on. I don't know how they do it because it's an absolute bane in my life because it just sits there kind of popping up going, oh, you've got another email. So if you have got that turned on, turn it off, you'll just drive your crackers. So that's definitely one of the first things to do. When it comes to the keyboard shortcuts, there's a load of them, and I'm not going to go into them just talking to you about it here because it'll just be a load of keys you've got to press. So I've simply included a list of all of those on the link that is being shared around. And you can dig through those and find out some of the easy ones. But it really is, once you get hang of keyboard shortcuts, you do just sit down and you go through next, and I'm going to do this with it, next, and next. And you usually just tap a couple of keys and it's becomes much more organised. Now, the other thing that's really good for organising outside of just those little tick boxy things is labels. And I use a lot of these simply because they help me categorise things a lot more deeply. And for this, I mean, just as an example, this is just a list of everything I managed to pull up with labels project assessment. Now, as you can see, just to kind of make things really quickly, like I mentioned, I use keyboard shortcuts. And you can add a label very quickly. It's just basically you press L and it gives you the list of all the labels. And if you start typing in the label name, it will start auto-completing it for you. So if you label them, you know, kind of with a little bit of tactical kind of naming, so say project is P assessment, all I have to do is type LPA, press enter, then suddenly something's labelled and off it goes. And you can do that very, very quickly. So you can just see, get an email and you go, that applies to this category, that category, that category, and you just fly through them in just a few keystrokes, and it suddenly becomes much more organised. And the labels are very, very handy. As you can see, it just pulls out these, so you can have multiple labels on anything. And this is, if you're coming from Thunderbird, this is one of these big differences. In Thunderbird, you kind of have folders, and you kind of give everything this kind of big structure, and you tuck everything away. And one of the horrors of the migration is actually when you kind of, all the folders come over to Gmail, and then suddenly you've lost the hierarchy, and everything's just this big list of labels. And it's kind of, this is not exactly how it was in my Thunderbird at all. You do wind up at the very beginning with this big task where you've got to kind of relabel things a little bit and get them organised again. But once you've managed it again, it becomes very, very quick to kind of reorganise things, and you wind up having things having multiple categories. So you have much more ways to find things, as it were. You can filter things down a lot, much more quickly. And the other thing is you can wind up with loads and loads of labels. As you can see, I've got them nested in here, so you can kind of just have a few, and you can quickly pop open whole bits to just find the whole shebang. And you can also choose which ones you want to hide, which ones you know you're never going to use. So it's worth kind of going through the manage section of this, simply so you can pare it down and just kind of see the things you actually use on a day-to-day basis on the left-hand side. Now, one of the other things that is really good with labels, of course, is it makes it much easier to search for things. So one of the most underused things in all of Gmail, is the advanced search bar at the top. Now, I'm guessing quite a few people just kind of done things like typed in the name up here and just kind of found a few basic things. But that tiny, pretty much invisible on this screen, arrow just over there, that drops down this advanced search section here. And that will let you do things like search within a particular label, from a particular person. You can have all sorts of people. It can be an and, an or, an if. Actually, no, it can't be an if, but and and ors, so they're certainly fine. And you can actually narrow it down to quite a very small range of things that you think is going to be the place to find something. And this means it's much, much easier to actually keep track of a lot of the conversations that are going on, because you can simply find them again if you've just got a few little bits of remembered information, or just something that someone said to you to go on. It doesn't take much, and it will come up with all sorts very, very quickly. And you probably find something within just a couple of little quick searches. It's also, of course, another good reason to actually use the labels. But also, in that little section, actually, I'll go back one little bit, is this little create a filter with this search. This little bit here lets you do all sorts of automagical things. So filters are basically a way of whenever anything comes in, you apply a certain action to it, and it becomes, well, fixed in however way you want it. So a lot of these, anything I get from the courses, a lot of them automatically get labelled as soon as they come in based on something in the title or the email or who it's from. So anything from you is more likely to get IHTA on it. Certainly if it's got a module code in it, it just goes through. There it is. And I think you also get kind of an information resources group label and all sorts of other things. So, you know, you went up with all sorts of labels for all sorts. But it does mean that everything just gets labelled as it comes, which means I don't have to think about it. Or at least all I have to do is just do a couple of occasional things like, is that correct? Is that incorrect? Shall I change this label or remove it? So one of the first things you can do, actually, if you've got a jam-packed inbox, is simply go ahead and type unsubscribe into that search bar at the top and see what it comes back with. anything that's kind of like junk mail, certainly from the big kind of senders, will usually have an unsubscribe button. So you'll be able to do that, and you should see kind of a lot of really, really kind of regular emails in that inbox. So bloody LinkedIn's and Google Plus are hammering me. I think there's some things from some other places. I think got Youth Hostel Association, Go Camping, stuff like that. And God knows what else is in my inbox. I'm not going to show you. There's probably all sorts of junk mail I got in there. Who knows what I've been using my work email to subscribe to. So you can basically do that, see some of the kind of regular kind of things in there, and see if you can spot the patterns in the emails, and just say, I'm going to filter for this, and throw it in the bin. Just delete it. Don't want to see it anymore. Quite similarly, this is actually quite a longer one, but I guess everyone here basically gets lots and lots of emails from the university, because you're on all sorts of these little list mails. I find a lot of the time that, well, I don't want to delete these, but I do want to just, I don't want them in my inbox kind of sat there just flagging the top, because I get, about 20 a day, and you just go, this isn't information I need to know. I don't need to know who's died. It's, nice it's there, but I don't need to know. So
unless it's you.
Unless it's me, in which case I would like a notification. So you can do things like you just kind of come up with a search term here, which I've included in the presentation. It's down in the notes for this. And you can just kind of give it a particular tag. I've given it a bulk mail, EOS, list mail tag, and that means I've just got a whole list of all the things that I don't really have to check particularly urgently. And what I do is I'll just check it at the end of the week. Just go, there it is. Someone's got an offer for a cat that they want rehomed or something like that. But usually this stuff from the list mails, it's not things that have to be acted on straight away. So a week's usually enough leeway for me to just play around with it and come back to it. And God knows that saves me just having a lot of things just flash up at the top of my inbox and scare the hell out of me. So the other thing, actually, before I go on, is what was I going to go? Actually, I'm going to go talk about archiving, getting rid of the things that are kind of just not needed anymore. So you do kind of get to a point where you actually wind up having loads and loads and loads of stuff from years and years back. And I usually kind of say, well, if it's more than X number of years old, then I probably don't need it unless it's got something flagging that this is still from a project that you're working on. So you can actually just go and apply a certain label to it that says if it was created within X amount of time, so from this date to this date, then I'm going to give it a particular label. For me, it's just ZZZ, as in this is probably useless. And then you can go ahead and just find that particular label, and you can do a download of it. There's this thing called Google Takeout. That little URL at the top there, once again, it's in the presentation. You just bob that in and scroll down, and this is a list of all the things that you can export from Google. So you can do that to just find a particular label of things that you know are old and useless, export them, so you kind of, got them as a backup. If you ever need to absolutely trawl through them, you probably won't. Download it, pop it away somewhere, and then get rid of it from your inbox. Forget it was ever there. It means you won't be able to search for it, but you'll be able to get it back if you ever really, really, really need it.
And what does it look like when you get it back?
Basically, it goes back to, it comes down as a bit of an mbox file, and you can re-import that through Gmail. There's a kind of an import function, so you can just have it all come right back, and then you go, oh God, I've got to get rid of this all again. Fortunately, you'll still have that Z label on it, so it's easy enough to get rid of again. But as I mentioned before, one of the things with Gmail is it's distracting. It's got the steady stream of, another thing's come in, another thing's come in. You'll be working on something, and then you'll notice, something else has just come from somebody else, and that's then in the back of your head. So a lot of the time when I'm working, I try to avoid actually using Gmail directly. I'll take it outside to Trello, which is just something for basically project management in a little way. This is something that you can look up called Kanban, where you just kind of say it's either something I'm going to do, it's something I'm doing now, it's something I've done. I haven't really done that much this month, but then I've been away for most of it. So a lot of the time I'll just kind of drag kind of emails and drop them in here. But what I often do is, just sneaky little trick, is that every single email you ever have actually has a URL which you can reuse. And that particular URL only works for you. So you can copy that out, you can drop it into other places and re-find your email very, very quickly, and simply work on that particular email. But it won't work for anybody else, or they'll get a completely random email which has nothing to do with what you were doing, and they'll be surprised that, they'll think, what the hell are you talking about? It'll probably lead to a piece of junk mail. So you can basically grab that to reuse things. And it doesn't just work for individual emails as well. Things like labels, you can reuse those as well. So that all has a specific URL which you can grab and reuse. And that way you can kind of quickly just say, this is a particular project, I'm going to have a big long string of things to do about it, but there's just one overall label which lords over it all, and I can find everything. Just click on that, and there it is, big long list of things that have got to do with that particular project. Now, you mentioned a few people who are still using Thunderbird. All right, just a little warning for you. It's entering its twilight years.
It's not, it's back in a new series.
I should have seen that coming. But yes, it's gone to the point where it's no longer supported by the Mozilla Foundation, people who got it together in the first place. It's gone over to being run by the community. They simply handed it over at the end of 2014 and said, okay, you guys can advance this if you want to, but we're not doing anything with it anymore. So it is basically, it's not really going to do much, and it could easily go to the way of lots of other old programs which aren't supported by their people anymore. It's probably on its way out. So if there's ever a time to move over to Gmail, now's probably it. Simply because the more you use it, the more things you're going to build up and the more you have to convert at the end.
Is it worth migrating it? Because it seems to me that, like with all of these folders, I might as well just start using Gmail from scratch and not migrate things across, because the new mail is coming in anyway, and I could use that as an archive of everything after, say, 1st of April.
I'd say, well, that's certainly a good starting filter point. There could be things that are kind of ongoing, if you've got, say, a big project and things like that. So it might be worth kind of doing a quick drag.
But they'd still be in Gmail anyway.
Yeah, they'd still be there. You just kind of know they're after a certain date. But there might be a few, I know there's also little key links to things that we need to re-grab and stuff like that. So it might be worth going through and finding just the important ones you are going to actually have to keep, but most of it will be trash. You can just let that slide.
Thank you.
And by the way,
Well, I have a fear of Google Mail, because I have to use it for work from home, so it's checking. But what I probably choose the fact that I don't understand enough about it is it keeps an email trail in one.
in one conversation thread.
Yeah, and if I want to forward part of an email or one of those emails in there to someone else, with Thunderbird, I click on forward, I delete what I don't want to send, and I send the rest. And I don't seem to be able to do that as easily. And I'm always at the back of my mind, what am I sending to whom? Because I don't feel like
No, that's fair enough. I'm going to dive into Gmail itself. Oh, not that one. And I'll just show you a few things. So, okay, so here's an email. There's a couple of things you can do. So there's actually a section in here which is exceedingly useful called Labs. And in here, there's one thing that I think would be really good for just kind of replying directly with just a particular bit. It's called quote selected text, this little bit here. So if you just enable that, once you've got that, you can grab any email and just say, okay, the only bit that's actually important is this random bit of text here. That's going to be what I reply with. And it just grabs that bit of it. And all the rest of the email is gone. But when in my view of it, I'll still see the whole thing as like a big collected thread, but the recipient only sees that bit as a starting point.
I was going to say, I find it quite helpful to pop out email as well.
Yes.
So when you get down to the bottom, where you've got your reply, if you've got a tiny bit, and then next to that curvy arrow next to your face, if you say pop out reply,
you get it down here.
And then you actually only see the bit that you're going to be forwarding.
Right.
Because I got confused about that as well.
But yeah, I think a lot of people get caught out about because you do wind up with this massive trail, and you there's bits like half the emails still somewhere else, so you have to hunt around for it.
You can conversation off as well, can't
Mm.
you?
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Which
another
I have
one.
on at work, but I can't get that to work with an iPad.
Oh, can't you?
It's not there as an option. So when I'm at home, if I'm on my iPad, I see everything in conversation view form, which
Do
annoys
you use
me.
the Gmail app? There is a separate app
Ah,
for
probably
iPad
not.
for
No.
Gmail,
Do I need to do that?
and that really helps. Yeah.
Does that give me the full right rather than going in through the website and Muse?
Yes.
Yeah,
Download
click
the
on
Gmail
load
app.
the
Gmail
yeah.
app. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll do that. Thanks.
And just put your work settings into
Yeah,
there.
yeah, that's
and
fine.
That can probably work for you.
But yeah, for anyone new to it, that's just that little setting here in the general settings, and it's basically pick your preference. Some people like to have the whole conversation as a big thread, some people just like individual emails. It is all a matter of preference.
Is there a way of constructing a filter that does something just with things that have an attachment to them? Because they tend to be things that you
Yeah.
might want to refer to. So.
Yep.
Ah, okay.
There we go.
Great.
And just like that. So I've got all sorts. You can also do it for things over a certain size as well if you really want to.
So you could do it with a rule then, could you, that if it
Yeah.
has an attachment, put it into...
Exactly, and I think there's also things you can do things like there's an app called If the Map, which can do things like just automatically download attachments in Gmail to Drive, so you wind up with an archive of everything there as soon as it comes in. That's another thing that's well worth looking into that I don't think I've actually put in the notes. But it's got all sorts of little recipes for just kind of automating tasks within Gmail and lots of other programs. It's worth playing with if you get a chance.
You have to be careful what you filter though. I set up a filter on the word accepted because I was getting so many calendar invites coming back with accepted, and then completely missed the one that said accepted paper. And then I started getting about a week later I got a phone call from somebody saying, are you actually going to do anything about this paper that we've accepted? And I'm like,
It's true. It's, whenever you set up a filter, do make sure you check on it after a week or so. I've done the same thing where I had a whole set of courses emails just vanish into the ether for a little while until someone pointed out that, why haven't you got back to me about this?
I'm just wondering whether that date within box at the very bottom is new, because I've got on quite well with the filter, but recently
Yes.
it hasn't been finding what I wanted, and I suddenly noticed that there's that thing that says 1 day on it, and I haven't pressed it, so you know when you're quickly trying to find an email,
Yeah,
and I didn't
it's
find it, and I'm like, I know I've received it.
it's
But
one of these
that
things.
thing, you know, that could say within a year if you drop it down. you know.
Yeah, it's one of these things. It's actually quite new. Before there was a thing where you had a date selector on there where you could do before and until, but that got replaced with this. I think because it was I'm not sure why, to be honest. I'm guessing it just worked better for Google, but
But just don't let it catch you out.
yeah, I mean it's not actually automatically applied. So I could search for something. I don't know, from anything from little Mr. Luke Miller, and I would get more than just 1 day's worth of it. I would get a lifetime's worth of emails from him, and I do have a lifetime's worth of emails from him. And that's just the ones with attachments.
Okay, and you didn't have to say within the last year to get that list?
No.
Okay,
By
so-
default, it's turned off, so it's usually okay. But it is there to kind of, if you it's the kind of thing you actually accidentally put something in, then before you know it, you've got a very, very narrowed search.
Every so often it doesn't search for something you're looking for no apparent reason. Because if you go the long way around, I do eventually find it, and there's no reason. Sometimes it might be if you've sent it to more than one person. So if you've just put one of those people in
So
on your
it's
search, does it ignore?
It should find.
It should find anybody.
Anything. If it's there's certain things it definitely won't find. Like if you know that someone's probably in a list mail or something like that, it simply won't find it.
Yeah.
And that's how they got something. Simply because it's not there on the list of emails attached to it.
I would say, Catherine, when I'm doing those sorts of searches and I don't find something I expect to find searching all mail, I always then search mail and spam and bin. And every now and then, the reason I can't find it
It's
is
'cause it's
because it's in
shunted
the bin.
itself.
I have accidentally put it in the bin.
Yeah.
And actually being able to re-find stuff you've accidentally put in the bin, I
Yeah.
find one of the most useful functions
Yes.
of that.
It's not often I
search.
can't. It's just
Yes.
now and again, and I couldn't tell you
Yeah.
why it happens. There must be something that it's not liking.
well, that's
but-
actually a good point. I mean, like I say, it won't by default look inside all of those extra little folders.
Yeah, because it doesn't search your bin, does it?
It
Unless you
Automatically.
specifically
Yeah.
ask it to,
Yeah.
mail
Yeah.
and spam and bin is what they use.
So you do have to be careful there. But yeah, so we've got a couple of minutes left. So any questions before everybody vanishes?
Dan, what was that Trello thing that you showed me?
Trello is it's a really handy, just kind of task management thing. So, I'm trying to remember, have I got a Google login for this? No, it's not got a Google login. I can't remember my username for this.
I've got one here, which I can open up through.
But it is a very simple way. I'm going to try something. Yes. So this is a way of really kind of quite quickly just dropping things into lists. So it depends. It's one of these things. It's quite an open-ended kind of way of organising things. So there's this style of kind of organising things called Kanban, which is kind of, it did the rounds a couple of years ago. It was kind of, this is a good way of organising things, just to do, doing, done, and there's a few other kind of things you can add to it. But a lot of the time you can break this down into projects, and this is how I'm going to manage a project. Because you can basically, for all of these little cards or lists, you can choose exactly what it's going to be, what you're going to add to it, who's going to see it, and how you actually work. So you can actually, I'm going to go back to my boards. I'm pretty sure I've got beginnings of.
Are these emails you're storing? Or is it something else completely?
No, this is something else completely different. So.
But you said you could put a URL into one of these.
Yes.
That links to your email.
Exactly. So if I wanted to just grab this email from John Traxler. In fact, I'm going to go with the Adobe Connect booking. I could drop that into an email here on this Sustainable Device board. So
why is that email tag so much longer than the one that you showed us? Because it's got all.
This one here, basically, it goes. Part of the string is the search term that was used to find it in the first place.
But it's saving the short version, is it? Yeah.
So, I mean, there's bits here that I know that bit could be removed and that bit could be removed and it'd still work fine. But, yeah, sometimes if you've kind of done a search beforehand, it will add all sorts of things to the string. It'll get a bit kind of crazy. But it will still work. You'll just think you've done the search beforehand. And yeah, I'll be able to click through to that and go straight back to the email and have it open directly where it was before. Which is kind of a quick and easier way of finding things sometimes.
So you could integrate it with Google Calendar by putting these URLs into the notes field of Google Calendar. Yeah, the one thing to remember is if you're inviting other people to the thing, they might click on it and go, what the hell? Okay, yeah.
So it's a way you can use it for yourself purely, or you can have it if you're doing project work and there's sort of a team of you.
Trello, that is. So yeah, you can add other people to it quite quickly and just bob them.
Yeah, or if it's just for you, there's only you can see it. If
That's
it's just for you, yeah. Okay.
And did you say that sorry, carry on, sorry.
Oh, you
It's
sure?
not a Trello question.
That's okay. When it comes to Trello, is there anything else you'd like to know about it before I move on? It's just basically kind of a way of organising projects and tasks.
Yeah,
really.
I was interested to see how it would link with the Gmail, so I think,
Yeah, I think it can do a lot more than I actually do with it, to be honest. I think I'm pretty sure you can get ways to actually get it to integrate properly with Gmail. It's just that something I've chosen not to do. So I'm pretty sure you can have it email alerts back to your inbox and also kind of have things go straight from your inbox straight to Trello, but it's not something I've done yet. But there's things out there. Sorry, Catherine.
Did you say, because what I'd use in Thunderbird is roll-up or something? Is that something, did you say that Gmail does something similar to that within Gmail?
It's a service that you can, yes, it's basically something, it's slightly outside of Gmail, but it goes and uses your Gmail account to actually just kind of find lots of the emails that you kind of, bulk mails that you subscribe to. Once again, I'm going to add this to the list of things in this presentation.
So it's not actually part of a facet of Gmail, it is this that you're talking about?
It's basically it's an external application which
Yeah.
ties in with your Gmail and basically runs through it.
No, but what
That's
you
what I use Thunderbird. Yeah.
what you were doing though was searching for the word unsubscribe in the message.
Yes.
So
Yeah, so that was kind of similar.
So
So,
it's, yeah,
That's
so
why I got confused. isn't
yes,
it?
yeah.
I got you. Yeah. So it is a slightly different service. It'll do a lot of things very automatically via this, whereas my method that I showed you before was probably a bit slower than this, a bit more manual. But yeah, it's 1 o'clock now. That about wraps it up. So if anyone wants to just let us know.
This is Gmail to Trello Chrome app.
I
It was, but that's quite useful to know now.
That's fine.
Could you have my name?
I'm sure they might.
Yeah.
have some.
Yeah, so it looks like you just click onto the email and forward it into Trello.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's one of these things where you really need is kind of like a little tag to send it over. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure about this app though, because if that gives me the full programme, because it's so annoying, because it just keeps all the streams, and I like to work with the conversation viewer off.
Yeah.
I don't want it on, because it
I
annoys me.
can't cope with conversation.
It's one of these things that comes to real personal preference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Share out the way as well.
Oh, this thing. This thing is
Follows
basically
you.
follows
It's Big
me
Brother's
around
watching
and,
you, Dan.
it's recording.
It's recording you,
Yeah.
right? There's no
The scary thing is though, it shows me my face the whole time.
But it doesn't show you the screen while you're talking about it.
No, I think that's the thing to actually get it so it shows presenters' notes on here instead of showing my own face, which is a bit distracting. But I haven't figured that out yet. All in good time.
Thank you very much.
No worries, I hope it was useful. It's a bit of a
And
whistle
you're
stop.
about half of it. It's really supposed to pick up those extra bits, isn't it? So.
So I'm going to have to finish off those notes and make sure all the references are in there.
Do you want me to leave you to it then, echo-wise? Will you just send me the link?
See you soon.
Yeah.
Or do you want me
See
to
you,
do
Roz.
it? See you, Roz.
I'll quickly get it done now, so
Okay.
I'll just fire it away. And
All right then. You okay taking everything back to reception then?
Yeah, no problems.
Sure.
Yes. Go around the corner.
Thanks very much, Dan.
Stop, I was not working on the call.
Want a cookie? Do you want to take